Hello again. The parallels between the way in which Britain has been dragged into two world wars in the past and the situation right now really are uncanny. In 1914, poor little Belgium stood alone against the might of the Kaiser and the German Empire. Britain had an obligation to go to the aid of this plucky little nation and defend it against the bully who was threatening it. This sentiment, although very noble and praiseworthy, ended rather badly for Britain, as I recall. In 1939, something similar happened when we in Britain were outraged at the invasion of Poland by the Wehrmacht. Brave Polish cavalry charging against the tanks of the German army. Of course, we were honour bound to go to their defence. Today it is heroic Ukraine which is being attacked by a larger and more aggressive neighbour, and we all feel that something must be done. One sympathises with such sentiments. One quite understands why people in Britain feel that it is our duty to help Ukraine in any way that we can. After all, where will it end? Perhaps the Russians are a threat to us as well. And look at all those dreadful images we're seeing on the television and in the newspapers about the bombing of Ukraine. Surely we can't just ignore it. Perhaps we could at least declare a no-fly zone above the country to protect them from attacks by Russian aircraft and missiles. This seems to be the favourite course of action of these saloon bar bores that one hears pontificating about the war. As part of NATO, we did such a thing in Bosnia in 1992 and also in Libya 20 years later. Couldn't we at least help Ukraine's defence to that extent? Increasingly, people are demanding such a step, and even the British Prime Minister Boris Johnson is saying now that something must be done. Of course, Johnson suffers from the delusion that he is a reincarnation of Winston Churchill, and so we can see why he would be keen on being a wartime leader during a world war. But for the rest of us, the idea is rather less attractive. The Ukrainians, quite understandably from their point of view, are doing their best to drag us into their war. I don't blame them for that in the least. The images coming out of that country show harrowing scenes, and there is a temptation to us in this country to say to ourselves, it's so horrible, there must be something we can do. The idea of a no-fly zone, which so many people are keen on, would mean declaring that no aeroplanes could operate over Ukraine, and that if we saw any, then we would shoot them down. Since only Russian planes are flying there at the moment, this would mean shooting down Russian aircraft, which is an act of war. In effect, setting up a no-fly zone would mean declaring war on Russia. During the Cold War, we were very careful not actually to have a war with Russia, for obvious reasons involving thousands of nuclear warheads, that sort of thing. Those reasons still exist. That's why in the 60s, 70s and 80s we fought proxy wars in Vietnam, Africa, Central America, the Middle East and Afghanistan, so that we would not be fighting Russia in Europe. Most of us still think this would be a very bad idea. The First and Second World Wars were very bad things for this country, as well as for everybody else. Given the choice between Ukraine being bombed and occupied and the whole of Europe being bombed, along with much of the rest of the world, I think on balance it would make more sense to limit the devastation to that one place, rather than seeing it spread everywhere else. We cannot save Ukraine. All that we can do is either contain the war or light the fuse, which will cause it to spread across the whole world. I know which option I would rather choose.